Hello, Library Administration. Thank you for joining us to discuss our Teen Services Department and some changes we would like to implement. Many of these changes will be a radical pivot from how our department has typically operated, but our hope as a group of very passionate teen librarians is that these changes will encourage lively teen participation in programs and other services that we offer. We strongly believe that these changes will bring the library more teen participation than ever. By the end of this presentation, we hope that you will see the value in these changes and will reconsider merging teen and children's services into an overarching youth services model. Today, the teen librarians addressing you will be Carly Cretney Peterson, Jenny Hernandez, Alejandra Jimenez Martinez, Kate Layton, and Yesenia Littlefield. Before we get into discussing these changes, it's important to discuss the current state of our Teen Services Department at our library. So as I noted at the start of this presentation, we do have low participation in our programs and other services that we offer for teens. However, we do see consistent use of our collection, meaning that teens are using the library, but they are choosing not to participate in our programs and other services that are available to them. We're noting that there is a low usage of teen dedicated space by teens. So it's not that the space isn't being utilized at all, it's that it's being utilized mostly by older children or what some people refer to as tweens. It's also important to note that we've had very inconsistent participation in our teen advisory board. And by inconsistent, I mean that it's been difficult to retain members on our board and to recruit new members when we lose somebody from our board. It's also worth noting that all of our teen programs require approval before they're allowed to be implemented. So with that, we are going to propose changes to our model of teen services to avoid the teen services department being absorbed into the youth services. The changes that we suggest will be based off what we have seen taking place in our library, and our suggestions will be based in research and anecdotal evidence. So these are the changes that we will be discussing in our presentation today. The first is that we are going to enforce a teen-only age group in our teen space and have a very clear demarcation of space. We will also restrict our programs for teens to only teens. So that means not allowing children or young adults to participate, just 13 to 18. We'll move on to discuss a reimagining of our teen space using the Nordic forced space model, as well as performing outreach to local schools and changing teen perceptions of the library by providing teen access to services and through partnerships. We will also discuss how we would like to transition from a teen advisory board model to more of a teen leadership group, and how that teen leadership group can participate in outreach and partnerships and through programming. The first change that we'd like to talk about today is having a true teens only space. So as of now, we have a teen space, yes, but it's underutilized by teens and overutilized by older children, which we recognize to be a problem that needs a solution. We do not believe the solution is to merge our department and space with an overarching youth services model, but rather we believe that teens will begin to congregate in their dedicated space in the library once we implement a strict teens only policy. And this is how we plan to go about it. First, drawing from the research of Coleman and colleagues, which explored teens and what they value in the library, we will make an extra effort to have a very clear demarcation of space for the teen area. Teens in this study discussed the importance of a clear demarcation of space and reported that it made them feel more welcome in teen spaces and that it improved the overall teen space atmosphere. Given these findings, our goal is for every person who approaches the teen area to know that they are entering a teen space. We can achieve this by posting clear signage and landmarks drawing the line between the teen space and the rest of the library. Similarly, we can post clear signage saying that the space is reserved for teens only. So this is where the enforcement starts to come in. We, as the teen librarians, will be those enforcers and will ensure that this boundary is being respected by asking any person who is not a teen to leave the space. This will go for the older children that would like to occupy the space that we're seeing now, and adults that may want to use the space as well. Parents can be advised to wait in another part of the library for their teens, but may check in periodically if needed. But by making the teen space children and adult free, particularly during popular times that teens would like to use the space, for example, after school, teens will begin to take ownership over this space. And so I loved this quote from the Velasquez article in 2016 that said, "A teens only area sends a message that the library values teens by reserving a space in the library where they can take ownership." So for this ownership to take place, we have to send the message to teens that we care about you and we really value you and we want this space to be just for you. And once they feel that they have that true space, they are going to start taking ownership over it. So I thought that was a really nice quote that just really captured the importance of a teen-only area. So moving on to our next suggested change, which is similar to the last, is that we have teens only programming as well. So teen programs will be limited to only people who are between the ages of 13 and 18 years old. Teens should not have to share space with younger children or adults who want to participate in their programs. Teen programs are an opportunity and a space where teens are free to learn and to navigate social interactions in an environment that recognizes the unique challenges of adolescence. So yes, the program has something to offer, entertainment maybe, things like that, but it also is a rich source of social interaction and just learning how to navigate these interactions with people who are going through similar things. They're in a very similar developmental period. So the importance of really restricting the age group is so the flourishing of these interactions and learning and inspiration can really take place. Because when we have children participating, or older children, tweens, some might say, participating in programs, it can have a real cooling effect on the part of the actual teens. So teens may come to a program made for them and see children participating and say, I don't think this is the right place for me. You know, kids can be a real turnoff for teens in a programming situation. And on the other end of the spectrum, there may be adults who would like to participate in our teens only program, particularly teens who may have aged out of the program so that they participated at one time and now they've turned 19 and 20, but they want to continue participating. It can be very important to say, we appreciated your presence, we appreciate you as a person. However, it is time for you to move on to adult programs because teens can feel intimidated by adults in their spaces. They can feel uncomfortable with adults in the teen spaces, and they're just not on the same developmental level or maturity level. And in a blog post by Jensen in 2014, She made a point that we wouldn't want our 13, 14, 15-year-old children going to a party with 18, 19, 20-year-old adults. And the same kind of goes for library settings as well. It's just two different developmental periods. And for comfortability, safety, and for the opportunity to have fruitful social interactions in a safe environment, we need to also exclude any adults that may want to participate. I pulled an article from this blog post by Jensen, who is a librarian, who has been a teen librarian for over 30 years. And she described her Tuesday night coffee house program. She said, every Tuesday for almost 10 years, I had anywhere between 50 to 70 teens come after school. Some kids played Yu-Gi-Oh!, some played Magic, some played video games, some did their homework, and some just sat around, talked, and ate cookies. And I made a strict rule. Only teens could come. So 50 to 70 people showing up for one program is amazing. And we think that we could have these same numbers or numbers on par if we restrict our programming to teens only as well. So next, we are going to be talking about the Nordic force space model and how we can reimagine our teen space with it.
So I will be covering the teen space, the physical environment that we have for our teen libraries, and we're going to imagine what it could be. And I know not everything that we ask for is going to happen, but this is a model that we are going to work off of to improve the teen space and also hopefully engage more teens and retain them longer in all the other areas of our teen programming. So we're going to be working with the Nordic Force Space model, which was created by the Danish Agency for Library and Media, also known as DALM. And it was talked about in the book Real World Teen Services by Jennifer Lasquez. And she goes on to talk about it as the library as a whole must offer teen users opportunities to experience, discover, participate, and create. So we're going to talk a little bit about what this means and how we could change the physical environment to kind of reflect that. So each one of these 4 areas, they are excite, create, explore, and participate. They all flow seamlessly together. There's not one area that's just excite. There's not one area that's just a performance area. But it's how they all work together to create a good teen space. So excite is also inspire. How do we inspire teens? It's by the experiences that they have with us, the materials that are available to them, as well as the resources. And also, I think that also means giving them a chance to work with emerging technology. That's not only going to give them something to do while they're here, but hopefully help them later on in their career. Maybe they're going to be working with this emerging technology, but also just as a way to keep them to use their skills. The group of teens that are growing up now have grown up with technology, and just furthering their ability to work with technology, keeping them on their toes when it comes to technology is really important for not only us as librarians, but for teens looking at what all their possibilities are. Another area is the create, or that's their performance space, so to speak. This is where information, knowledge, and art are all created. And this is how teens create a lot of that ownership in a space. There's artifacts of the teens' presence in their space and throughout the library. So that could be art, that could be, things that they've made at their maker space, that could be a variety of things. But we're keeping the things that they make and letting them create that ownership, seeing that we respect them so that they respect us and that they come back as well to the library to use all these resources that we have. Under participate, that's also how teens meet. So this is allowing flexible seating and furniture, allowing teens to be social. Teens are going to be social no matter what we do, so we might as well give them the space to do it and do it without disrupting a lot of other guests in the library. Explore is also learning. So, having ways for them to learn for school, having them ways to learn about what they want to learn in their own life, in their own leisure. So, laptops, computers, creating a maker space again to use emerging technology, um, but also using the space so that they can work socially or as a group. Next, I just want to look at a couple of libraries that have been in the news recently. The first one on the top left is a San Diego Public Library. The one on the top right is from Orinda, California, and the bottom one in the middle is from Longmont. As you can see in these spaces, teens are not cramped away in the corner. They're still out in the open in the library. There's furniture for them to use as a group to play games, to work individually. There's great lighting. Um, there's also presence of teens in them. So we have to consider our resources, our materials that we have, how we want teens to engage with others in the community. So again, having space for them to sit and talk, play games, do homework, all of this is really important for making sure teens stay at the library and engage, which is what we're looking for. The teen space itself, I would just like to talk about what it can be if we used our imagination. There's a lot of asks here, and not necessarily all of them are going to happen in the end. But I would just like to start with the teens use space for libraries for access technology, for study space as a place for conducting leisure pursuits such as reading and game playing, and as a place to socialize with peers. And this is from a recent ALA article called "Hey, the Library is Kind of Awesome: Current Trends in the U.S. Public Library Services for Teens." And I'm sorry, that's from the Public Libraries Online, not the ALA. But so here in the orange, we have all of our collection: books, video games, board games, magazines, comic books, card games. So things that they would have to check out, but also things that they could use in the space, like board games, card games, things with low activation that they don't need an adult to do with them or get for them, which is important. Teens don't always want to ask for help, and it's important that we recognize that they are capable and that they're individuals with responsibilities. That blue, sort of on the left, is a makerspace. I think it's great to have whiteboards, maybe chalkboards, somewhere where they could have temporary art up in place, but also just art supplies, doodle pens, 3D printers if possible, a sewing machine, things again to just allow teens to have access to that technology and those resources. That workspace in the lower left, I think it'd be great if we got laptops instead of desktops that are a little bit more flexible and they could use throughout the entire space. We would have to kind of learn how to monitor that, but I still think that's worth the risk. Having paper, graph paper, online paper, line paper, if they need to take notes, if they need to do math, they need to print something, that's all still available right there for them. And in general, throughout the space, having flexible furniture that's able to move around with wheels or carpet sliders, so that teens could do that on their own. Tables that flip up, flip down, so that we could create a bigger space if we need to, collapse them if we need more room for programs or if teens don't need them. Chairs that you could move to one side of the space to the other with ease, so that teens can group together and really be social, but also work and pursue leisure in their own way. So here are just a few reasons why teens should have their own space. That first one, it has been decades since psychology has recognized that adolescence is a unique developmental stage and it should be treated as such. We should acknowledge this by giving teens their own space that reflects their own needs. And one of that first ones is social development, as Anthony Bernier puts. There is often two butts to a chair, so having that flexible furniture that allows them to, be a little bit closer, kind of be with their friends, not necessarily, or not anything inappropriate, but just being closer, talking a little bit louder, being with their friends, it's not a problem, and we're there to allow that to happen in a good way. There's an argument that the library is not a safe space, and by that we mean that we are there to challenge our patrons and especially our teens. Dorothy Broderick, who's a young adult advocate in the libraries, puts it this way: is some of the materials that teens would have access to harmful? Of course it is, but it's more harmful to deny access to information that they want and need. Again, of course it is. So we really want to create this space, not just because we want teens to have fun, but because they need that information. If we do not create this space and allow teens to just, float through the library, we are doing a disservice to our community by not giving them the information that they want and need. Developing this sort of third space, a life between school and a life and between home life. This allows teens to be social, to go for school, to go for social needs, to go for information. And again, having teen activated events that are led by teens in the community. We're giving them what they want. And also those low activation activities like board games and card games, art supplies just being available. This way teens don't have to ask for help, and they're just able to go and do on their own. It's important to recognize that we are welcoming teens and not segregating them from other patrons. Other patrons may want that, but it's important that we know that this is for teens, not for other patrons in the library who think they might be unruly. This also, I think, one of the more exciting things, it expands teens' knowledge and interest in a lot of things. By having a makerspace, maybe we find someone who's really good at sewing who would never have thought that. Maybe someone's going to play a board game with someone they've never met. They're going to be best friends. They're going to continue to come to the library. So again, these are just some of the biggest reasons why we should have a teen space. And again, I just want to leave off with that Dorothy Broderick quote, because I think that is very important for us to keep in the back of our mind. Is some of the material that teens would have access to harmful? Of course it is. But it's more harmful to deny access to information they want and need? Again, of course it is. So, thank you. And we're going to go on to the next reason to keep the teen library space available.
We cannot claim that teens are not interested or want teen programs if they are not asked about it or do not know what our library system currently offers. In order for us to learn about their wants and needs, it is vital that we meet them at the place they spend most of their time, schools. But before we approach them, establishing a relationship with the school comes first. Leslie Campos, in her article about this subject, says, partnerships between public libraries and school libraries play an integral part in a healthy, thriving youth services department. The first step in this process would be to contact the school librarian and introduce ourselves. Though if the school librarian cannot take on such a venture, our connection to the school could be a teacher. We would talk to them about what is currently happening with our teen programming and ask about how we can help them in turn. We would first set up a time to meet either in person, Zoom, phone, or email. In the meeting, we would discuss what our partnership could accomplish. Next would be to meet the principal ourselves to get their approval for the partnership to move forward. Then it would be to introducing ourselves to teachers. Kara Perrian from Aberdeen Public Library suggests asking if we could be a speaker on People Free Days, where we would take the same approach we did when meeting the school librarian. Talk about what our library offers, what resources they lack we could provide them with, and brainstorm ideas where an assignment might require using the public library's databases. The Multnomah County Library in Portland, Oregon, developed a program named Assignment Alert. Here, a teacher fills a form that notes the grade level, details of the assignment, a possible book collection, materials required, even request a visit from a librarian to teach about using Multnomah's resources. Another example, at RFK Community Schools in LAUSD, the teacher librarian gave student aides a research project on an influential figure in their parents' teen years. A requirement of the project, using their student success cards, was to pull resources from the Los Angeles Public Library databases. Next would be to learn about teen interests through a survey developed between us and the school librarian. Another method would be to ask them directly during class visits. A large part of the problem with outreach and teen programming is that there is no clear definition of what that means for teen services, as pointed out by Jennifer Velasquez in her article about young adult outreach. A second problem is maintaining consistency in the practice. Unless teen librarians are proactively engaging in outreach for this age group, teens have no idea of what their local library offers. Outreach to schools would include us being part of back-to-school nights, school book fairs, joint reading programs, class visits, and library tours. In-class visits could include a short course in digital citizenship. For larger events happening at the school, such as back-to-school nights, we would have flyers of current programs. Flyers such as information about our TLG, library card applications, and in-author events. While the school helps us promote our events, we can do the same in turn. We could display work done by teens as a way of encouraging them to visit the library. Another method we can employ to reach teens is through social media. One example being Ana Cortez's Public Library's YouTube video giving a tour of the library and teen space. Another example from the Chinatown branch of the Los Angeles Public Library shares posts on Instagram about their teen council for those who would like to join. For this to work, the partnership we establish with our local schools must be maintained and additional library staff must be included.
Hello. We're all here because we have a vested interest in doing what is right for the teens that we serve. The teens in our community have shown that they are interested in services, circulation is steady, and teens visit the library. What we need to do is give teens a reason to come and stay. My colleagues have spoken at length on how we can improve services to increase teen participation in programs and create purposeful spaces for teens to thrive in. What's also important to discuss is how we got to this point in which teen services are being put at risk. The decision being made to combine services for two groups of users is a disservice to both, in particular, our teen users. As an organization, we are sending a message that we are disregarding their needs because we don't value them as users. Why are we so fast to disregard teens as users? Is it because, as an organization, it aligns with societal norms in which we view teens as unworthy or troublemakers? Huffington Post printed an article in which it discusses this exact point. The author stated that by simply looking at the media's portrayal of teens, they depict them in a negative manner. They share teen-related stories that are based on drug use, drinking, violent acts, and other out-of-control behaviors. This is further from the truth. Teen expert Mike Mail states that teenage bad behavior is actually low. In order to change teen services, we have to change our view of teens. Changing our views on teens is not only necessary to improve services, but it's also a professional obligation to protect their rights as users. It also guides us to provide teens with equal services. Teens have rights that are safeguarded from encountering acts, policies, and guidelines that affect their access. If we examine the American Library's Bill of Rights, it states that libraries are a place for free exploration and users should be encouraged to do so. The Bill of Rights makes it clear that everyone, including teens, have a right to use the library and have services with the same rights as other users. The Bill of Rights also states that access should not be removed based on age, origin, background, or views. If we continue to offer services specifically developed for adults and children, why not teens? By relocating teen services, we violate their rights to have equal access to services. Along with the Bill of Rights, we follow a code of ethics that guides how we as librarians should provide services. The code of ethics tells us that we should not let our personal convictions hinder our duty to our users, and we must be guided by our ethics to meet the needs of them. Therefore, as teen librarians, we have the obligation to inform you that teens need their own services. As teens, they are in a unique position because they are not children, but also not adults. Teen expert Anthony Bernier explains that the way we present teens with space, develop programs, and interact with them affect the perception of library services. Due to these needs, we are ethically bound to ensure purposeful access to services is being provided. As librarians and stakeholders, we're in a position to support their development and growth by continuing to provide them services. This can only be done by keeping the services separated and allowing staff to focus on each group's needs. After this, you might say, we're not affecting their access. We will continue to have materials in a teen space. The only factor that's changing is how we organize the services. The fact of the matter is that with children's services, they become the priority over teen services, and it will become the norm not to care what teens need. Teen expert Jennifer Velasquez shares that youth services, the word youth services, tends to focus the resources on children and their needs. Eventually, most of the resources will be allocated to children because that's where the demand is. Even in having this conversation about combining services, we're already saying we don't care. Instead of discussing an easy solution of combining services, why not deconstruct our teen services to figure out where we can improve? So far, we've heard many great recommendations of where to begin. If we all work together, the possibilities are endless. Along with changing perceptions and using our professional guidelines, it is helpful to create additional guidelines that support teen access. Therefore, we are proposing to develop guidelines that support teen development. Some library systems are moving to providing teens their own library card, which gives them responsibility, gives them an opportunity to have privacy, and it demonstrates a commitment for their growth because one day they'll become adult users, which is stated by Mike Males. We want to follow libraries that think outside the box when it comes to teen services. So if you look at the Huntington Public Beach Library as an example, they offered teens their own card to give them access to library materials and services, along with privacy. Or the Brooklyn Public Library that issues e-cards for teens as a response to combat censorship to give teens access to materials they actually want to read. These efforts also contribute in adopting guidelines in the Library Bill of Rights, Codes of Ethics, and the Freedom to Read Statement. Along with issuing teen library cards, we can partner with local school districts to get the word out about teen library cards and services. We can't do it alone. We all need to contribute to help teens create a good experience and continue to grow as library users. I do appreciate your time and willingness to listen to our concerns and recommendations. Thank you so much.
We need to outlearn the Teen Advisory Board, or TAB model, that's used for teens at many libraries. TAB is often considered the gold standard for most libraries when it comes to teen programming. But according to Velasquez, this model does little to provide real, authentic teen participation. The problem with TAB really starts with the name and the living language of advisory. If you ask someone to advise you, you're really asking for information, but not for participation. And a common complaint in libraries that use the TAB model is that teens are still not attending the programs that they themselves are planning, or that they themselves are providing ideas for. According to Velasquez, soliciting programming ideas from a teen advisory board really isn't that different from looking at a list of programs on Pinterest or from a book about teen programming. So what we are arguing for is a change from TAB to a Teen Leadership Group, or TLG model. Our goal is to reshape teen leadership, and this includes changing the name to reflect the change in participation. The Teen Leadership Group is a way to help teens develop the necessary skills that will help them as adults. Teens move from being passive to active when they're put in a leadership role. So what needs to change to make this possible? Well, first is the role of teen service librarians. This needs to change to move from planning programming and curating specific activities for teens to moving to being a facilitator of the teen leadership group, to empower them to plan and implement teen programs themselves. We need to rethink how teen librarians work with young adults because it's important to give teens the experience of ownership of the library. This means letting teens explore their interests instead of teen librarians crafting programs that reflect their hobbies and their interests. Teens need to be able to speak to their interests so teen librarians can then shift to, instead of, again, curating, to supporting teens, to helping teens follow their ideas to fruition and providing them the materials and the support that they need. So the goal of transitioning to a teen leadership group is also to create opportunities for authentic teen participation. Hosting a TLG creates a structure that leads to leadership opportunities for teenagers. If we are struggling to keep up teen participation in the library, then the best way to deal with this is to create a TLG, as this will increase teen involvement in our library. Something we need to reconceptualize is what we want when it comes to teen participation. We focus too much on numbers, on how many teens show up at each program, in a statistical way, something we can show to the bosses to say, this is being attended, this is a successful program. But we argue, based on research from Velasquez, that authentic teen participation means much more than how many teens show up, right? It's their level of involvement and their voice actually being incorporated into the decision-making and the programming within the library. So part of our argument is that we want to make sure that the TLG is not just planning, but also implementing teen programming themselves. So according to Velasquez, creating an environment where teens' participation in the development and implementation of library programming for themselves and their peers is really at the heart of successful programming. Teen programming efforts become more successful when teens are given responsibility over the programs themselves, because this invests them in the outcome of programs. According to Velasquez, the process of planning is more important than the program itself. The planning should be engaging and should count for volunteer service hours that teenagers often need to complete before graduating high school. Teen programs should all have a leadership component. A smart way to ensure more participation is to have teenagers meet before teen programs or those events that they're hosting so that teens do not have to make 2 trips to the library to be engaged within library activities. We need to also reconceptualize how we measure the success of teen programs and participation in the library. Decision-making and ownership are more important than the number of teens that are attending programs because it's a clear reflection of the authentic teen participation. As discussed before, the role of teen librarians really needs to shift to facilitator to help teens take the wheel. We need to help them and guide them and facilitate the implementation of programs so teens can see their ideas come to life. They get to follow their plans through to completion, which will make them feel supported and valuable as library patrons. The goal is to have teen programming planned and implemented by teens instead of for teens. Teens need to be decision makers, and they're the ones who are going to be doing this programming, with library staff serving again as facilitators who foster the teen-developed programming. Lastly, participation in the TLG should be structured but open. So there will be the core group of teens who regularly participate, but the traditional tab model could often have rules that are too cumbersome to account for drop-in participation. They often have structured roles or deadlines for when you can join, or paperwork or other barriers that can disincentivize new teens from joining in and getting those leadership opportunities, and really denying them the chance to see their ideas turn into concrete programs. Being structured but open means that anyone who wants to participate should be encouraged to do so. So in conclusion, we're arguing for radical changes that need to be made in order to improve teen services. The 19th century model does not fit the current needs of our library. We need to change and adapt to be able to best serve our patrons. It would be a mistake, in our view, to absorb teen services into the Children's Services Department to create the so-called youth services model. Teens have very different needs than children. We would be giving up on teens by continuing down that path. Instead, we're proposing radical changes that we see as necessary to improve teen services and increase authentic teen participation in the library. Specifically, we would like to make sure that teen space is enforced to those who are 13 through 18 years old, so that teens feel like they have a space of their own. And this age restriction also extends to programming, as letting older children or letting adults participate in these programs can often have a chilling effect on teen participation. We also look to the Nordic 4-space model for inspiration in how to best facilitate teen space to meet the needs and interests of our teens. We also argue that we need to have more outreach in many ways, many more connections with local schools, which will help provide more services to more teenagers and also increase teen participation in our library. Part of this involves changing our negative perceptions of teens, especially when it comes to providing them staff service in the library. We should instead seek to provide access to services and partnerships that serve teenagers' needs. We also strongly believe that we need to move from a tab model to a TLG instead. This group can then be given power to plan and implement teen programs that reflect their ideas and their interests. We need authentic teen participation instead of putting teens into a passive advisory role. Thank you for watching.